Many people look at the Middle Ages through incredibly romanticized eyes, conjuring idyllic images of valiant armored knights riding on lumbering steeds, their plumes fluttering in the breeze, or visions of beautiful damsels adorned in elaborate pointy hats, gracefully awaiting rescue. They dream of dragons soaring over fairy tale castles, of the purity of chivalry and the tender whispers of courtly love, all set against a backdrop of pristine, untouched wilderness. But for the vast majority of those who lived through this epoch, nothing, absolutely nothing, could be further from the harsh, undeniable truth. For most people, the Middle Ages were a stark, relentless existence defined by pervasive dirt, unimaginable difficulty, and omnipresent danger. It was a time when the very act of staying alive and striving for prosperity was a rare, fleeting luxury, and death, often in its most brutal and swift forms, lurked around every corner, ready to claim its next victim. Before we descend into this often uncomfortable truth, tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight? Are you nestled in a cozy modern home, perhaps enduring a long commute, or simply seeking a moment of quiet reflection, hidden from the general chaos of life, safe in your climate-controlled bubble? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and the time. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Your engagement truly helps us continue to unearth these often forgotten stories. Alright, let's rip you from your cushioned existence, away from your filtered, purified water, your meticulously stocked refrigerator, and your climate-controlled sanctuary. Let's hurl you, headfirst, into the perpetually damp, disease-ridden, and relentlessly unsanitary reality of a European village in the 14th century. Precisely at the moment, the bell in the distant, dilapidated church begins its merciless, unyielding toll signaling dawn. Welcome to the Dark Ages. You wouldn't last 24 hours. Your first awakening isn't to the gentle hum of your heating system, the soothing warmth of a memory foam mattress, or the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. No, instead, you're jarred awake by the biting, pervasive cold that seems to seep into your very bones, even under your rough, itchy wool blanket, which is likely stuffed with straw or animal hair. This isn't just a chill, it's a deep, penetrating cold that never truly leaves you, a constant companion from autumn through spring. The air is thick with the acrid stench of damp wood smoke from a nearby hearth, a stinging haze that perpetually irritates your lungs and eyes, mingled with the pervasive odor of unwashed bodies, both human and animal, and the undeniable tang of animal waste mixed with human refuse. As you stir, you'll immediately discover your new, unwelcome roommates. Fleas will be biting incessantly, their tiny, irritating pinpricks a constant torment beneath your clothing. Lice will be crawling on your scalp, an incessant itch that drives you to scratch almost involuntarily, and you'll likely hear the unsettling scuttling of rats across the packed earthen floor, perhaps even catching a glimpse of their beady eyes in the gloom, their presence a constant reminder of disease and decay. Houses weren't exactly palatial either. Most consisted of just one or two small, cramped rooms, often lacking a chimney, allowing smoke to fill the living space, and perhaps offering only one or two small, unglazed window openings that did little to ward off the elements. They were perpetually dark, suffocatingly smoky, reeked constantly, and were incredibly unsanitary because they were frequently shared with livestock, especially during the harsh, unforgiving winter months, when conditions outdoors were simply unbearable, with no central heating, no dependable lighting, beyond a sputtering tallow candle that cast more shadows than light, and certainly no running water. It's truly no wonder that medieval lives were tragically short. The very air you breathe is a noxious cocktail of smoke from open hearths, often burning damp wood or peat, which produces even more smoke, coupled with the unavoidable human and animal effluvium, and a pervasive, bone-chilling dampness that clings to everything. This isn't just unpleasant, it's a relentless assault on your respiratory system, making every breath you take scrape your throat, leaving it raw and irritated, and your eyes will constantly sting from the smoke and general irritation, often leading to chronic infections. Thirsty? That murky, stagnant, untreated well water is your only option. If you're lucky, it comes from a shallow well. If not, it's drawn directly from a river or stream that also serves as a dumping ground for human and animal waste, or collected as rainwater from lead-tainted roofs, providing an unseen, insidious poison. Drink up, if you dare risk the instant onset of debilitating dysentery, agonizing typhoid, relentless giardia, deadly cholera, or any number of other delightful, life-threatening waterborne parasites and infections that could fell you within hours. Forget the concept of daily showers, scented soaps, or even basic sanitation beyond a quick rinse in icy water or a rub with rough cloth, you'll quickly find yourself coated in an unyielding, oppressive layer of grime, sweat, and animal dander that will cling to your skin and clothing. Bathing was a rare and often communal affair, if it happened at all, perhaps a few times a year for the most fastidious, and soap as we know it, with its cleansing properties, was a distant dream. Flies, drawn by the omnipresent filth, the mountains of refuse, and the rotting organic matter that littered streets and homes, will be your constant buzzing companions. They will land on your meager food, crawl across your face, and relentlessly irritate any open sores you might have, acting as vectors for countless diseases. And yes, you will have open sores, because even minor cuts and scrapes, inevitable from the demanding manual labor, inevitably fester without any form of antiseptic or basic medical care. Your skin will itch incessantly from the filth and parasites, a maddening torment that will make sleep a fleeting luxury. The streets themselves are open sewers, a putrid mix of human and animal excrement, rotting food scraps, and general garbage, ensuring the spread of disease is constant and pervasive. Just picturing that first wave of stench, the biting cold, and the relentless assault of insects. What's the very first modern hygiene product or essential service you would truly, utterly despair for, the one that would break your spirit the quickest? Tell us in the comments and be excruciatingly specific about your sudden, profound craving. Breakfast is likely a thin gruel, a monotonous concoction, or a piece of hard, gritty bread, likely made from barley, oats, rye, or millet. This bread often contained ground stone fragments from crude milling processes, making every bite a painful assault on your teeth, leading to rapid wear, chips, and breaks. Meat is a profound luxury for most, a rare feast reserved for special occasions, if at all. Your diet will be relentlessly monotonous, severely nutrient poor, lacking essential vitamins and minerals, and frequently contaminated with dirt, insects, or mold. Your teeth? Prepare for widespread cavities, agonizing abscesses, and premature loss, with absolutely no hope of a dentist to alleviate your suffering, only agonizing pain and eventual tooth decay. Even if you were fortunate enough to be wealthy during the Middle Ages, affording the finer things in life, your chances of survival weren't necessarily guaranteed. While your table might be laden with meats like venison or peacock in rich cream sauces, followed by sugar desserts and fine wine, and you'd eat from beautifully glazed plates and drink from delicately decorated cups, these luxuries harbored a sinister secret. The elegant glazing was typically made from lead oxide. While it looked lovely and was practical for cleaning, when salty or acidic food was served on these glazed plates or kept in glazed pots for cooking, the coating would dissolve and the lead would be absorbed directly into your food. Lead is a highly poisonous heavy metal that accumulates silently in the human body over time, slowly poisoning you from the inside out. Acute poisoning could viciously attack the nervous system, causing debilitating headaches, agonizing abdominal pain, and infertility. Chronic poisoning could lead to terrifying seizures, debilitating mental decline, coma, and ultimately, a slow, painful death. For children whose bodies are still developing, the effects were even more devastating, severely impacting their cognitive development and overall ability to learn and thrive. Medieval skeletons exhumed from cemeteries in more affluent urban areas of Germany and Denmark have shockingly revealed lead levels well above what we consider normal today, indicating widespread exposure even among the privileged classes. Lead was also present in stained glass windows, coins, and on roof tiles, with rainwater collected from roofs for drinking, often becoming another insidious source of poisoning. Beyond lead, bread, the main food staple for medieval people, carried another deadly threat. Often, the rye used to make bread would become infected with a parasitic fungus called Claviceps purpura. This fungus caused an infection in humans known as St. Anthony's fire, or ergot poisoning. There were numerous outbreaks throughout the Middle Ages, which caused tens of thousands of people to die and millions more to become chronically sick. What we now know as ergot poisoning caused terrifying hallucinations, agonizing muscle cramps, persistent nausea, debilitating insomnia, and painful sores that would refuse to heal. In extreme cases, when left untreated, the blood flow to an infected person's hands and feet would be severely restricted, causing intense burning pains, leading to gangrene, where fingers, toes, hands, and feet could turn black, shrivel, and literally drop off, leaving a person permanently disfigured and disabled. Some historians even believe it was ergot poisoning that was responsible for some of the horrifying dancing epidemics that occurred between the 14th and 17th centuries, involving groups of people, sometimes thousands at a time. dancing erratically and uncontrollably in the streets until they collapsed from sheer exhaustion, injury, or even death. Imagine such a horrifying, uncontrollable madness. Every single meal you consumed was the direct result of relentless, back-breaking physical labor. A bad harvest, a sudden devastating flood, or an unusually brutal winter meant immediate and widespread starvation. Famine was not a distant threat, but a constant, looming shadow, never far away, shaping every decision and instilling a deep-seated fear. Malnutrition, endemic among the peasantry due to a monotonous diet of gruel and coarse bread, inevitably led to a severely weakened immune system, which in turn caused a surge in deadly diseases like dysentery, typhus, and smallpox, wiping out entire villages. The constant struggle for food meant that every calorie expended had to yield a return, making leisure a luxury few could afford. Step outside your meager dwelling, and you face dangers far beyond inconvenient traffic jams or a delayed bus. The wilderness was truly wild. Wolves, bears, and wild boars roamed the dense forests surrounding settlements, viewing humans and their precious livestock as just another potential meal. Even travel between villages, a journey of mere miles, was a perilous undertaking through untamed wilderness, where you were always on the menu for something bigger, hungrier, and far more vicious than yourself. Medieval Europe was teeming with wild game like rabbit, hare, deer, and boar, but these were exclusively for the nobility to hunt, a sport for the privileged, not a source of sustenance for the struggling lower classes. The penalty for poaching, for even daring to try and feed your starving family by hunting forbidden game, was usually swift and brutally harsh, often involving mutilation or death, making the choice between starvation and severe punishment a daily dilemma. After that first mouthful of gritty, dirt-laced bread and the constant threat of parasite-laden water, what's the one specific thing from your modern diet, or your modern safety regulations, or even just a common modern animal that you'd instantly sell your soul to have back? Tell us your most profound, desperate craving in the comments, and don't hold back on the details. Let's just suppose you suddenly found yourself arrived in medieval England, a victim of some inexplicable time slip, now completely stranded in the middle of the 14th century. The very first thing you would realize, with a crushing sense of isolation, is that you wouldn't understand a damn thing anybody was saying. The ordinary people spoke Middle English, a language vastly different from modern English, filled with unfamiliar vocabulary, complex grammatical structures, and regional pronunciations that would render casual conversation utterly unintelligible. Simple requests or questions would be met with blank stares. The posh aristocratic people, descendants of the Norman conquerors, spoke French, a language that signified their status and power, creating yet another linguistic barrier. And the clergy, the educated elite, who held immense power over daily life, spoke Church Latin, a dead language to all but the learned. Speaking only modern English, you might be able to pick up the odd recognizable word here and there, a mere glimmer of familiarity in a sea of alien sounds, but an intelligent, meaningful conversation with anybody would be an impossible feat at this point. Every interaction would be a frustrating pantomime, leaving you isolated, misunderstood, and profoundly vulnerable in a world where communication was paramount for survival. Beyond the linguistic chasm, your life would be relentlessly defined by endless, back-breaking physical labor from dawn till dusk, every single day. Your hands, accustomed to keyboards and soft fabrics, would quickly be calloused, blistered, and cracked, often bleeding from the constant friction and harsh elements. Your muscles would ache perpetually, a dull throb that never subsides. Plowing fields with oxen, a slow and grueling process that demanded immense strength. Sowing seeds by hand, a meticulous yet physically taxing task. Meticulously weeding vast plots under the unforgiving sun or biting wind. Harvesting crops with crude scythes, requiring precision and endurance. Threshing grain, a repetitive and dusty ordeal. Hauling heavy buckets of water from a distant well, often multiple times a day. Chopping and stacking endless piles of wood for fuel, a year-round necessity, and tending to the meager livestock, ensuring their survival to ensure your body, accustomed to modern comforts and conveniences, would literally break within weeks. There are no such concepts as weekends, no paid sick days, no retirement plans, no social security net to cushion your falls. You simply work until you physically can't anymore, or until the harshest weather conditions bring all activity to a standstill, leaving you to endure the cold and hunger with no respite. The grim reality is that 85% of the population in the Middle Ages were serfs. This means you would almost certainly be part of that vast, subjugated group, irrevocably tied to the lord and his land. much like a piece of property. Not only would you have to labor ceaselessly to grow enough food to sustain yourself and your family, but you would also be obligated to ensure there was ample surplus to pay the Lord his due, whether in crops, goods, or labor, often taking the best of your harvest. You couldn't leave the land without your Lord's explicit permission, nor could you even get married without his consent, as he saw your potential children as future laborers for his estate. In essence, you may as well have been a slave, living under the constant, arbitrary whims of your master, with no legal recourse or appeal. Your existence would be perpetually reliant on the unpredictable weather. Too much rain, or not enough, could cause a catastrophic failure of crops, leading directly to widespread malnutrition, and in the worst cases, mass starvation for your entire community. Privacy, as we understand it, was an utterly alien concept, as multiple generations of a family would typically share a single, cramped room, often with their animals during colder months, further intensifying the sense of a suffocating lack of personal space and constant intrusion. And what if you were unlucky enough to be a woman in this era? Then you would truly know the meaning of hardship, a life of relentless duty and profound vulnerability. Because of the immense importance placed on biblical texts and their interpretations by the church, medieval women were commonly regarded as morally weak, inherently flawed, and perpetually susceptible to sin, a legacy of Eve. This perception led directly to their widespread oppression and treatment as subservient beings, secondary to men, in almost every aspect of life. In particular, the writings of St. Paul were frequently highlighted to justify men's absolute authority over women, emphasizing their need to remain silent in church, and crucially, to always be under the complete control and dominion of their husbands. For the peasant woman, work was rigidly gendered, demanding an exhausting double burden that left little room for rest. She was solely responsible for the vast array of arduous household chores, not only spinning thread for cloth, brewing ale for the family's consumption, cooking meager meals over an open fire, weaving fabric on a primitive loom, and meticulously taking care of the livestock and children, but also sharing the physically demanding labor of the farm and fieldwork alongside the men. Women were generally expected to fulfill one of two life paths: marry or become a nun. It was the first option, marriage, that awaited the vast majority of women, and it was a path fraught with peril. Marriage, almost inevitably, meant pregnancy, and pregnancy meant childbirth, a terrifying ordeal with no modern pain relief, no sterile hospital setting, and no trained medical professionals to assist beyond perhaps a local midwife. Complications that we now consider minor or inconsequential could prove devastatingly fatal for both the medieval mother and her child. Even having money and status offered no guarantee of a safe birth. A caesarean section, for instance, was only performed if the mother was already dying, or more commonly, already dead, simply to save the infant. In 1420s Florence, for a stark and horrifying example, a terrifying 1 in 5 women died during labor, a statistic that underscores the immense risk of simply bringing new life into the world. Death during childbirth was so prevalent, so expected, that women were routinely urged to write out a last will and testament long before giving birth, a grim, heartbreaking practice that certainly takes the shine off what should have been a joyous, hopeful event, transforming it into a moment of profound dread. What kind of physical labor or social restriction do you think would completely shatter your modern spirit first? The endless, brutal toil, the constant fear of your Lord's whip, or the absolute suffocating lack of personal freedom and privacy in your daily existence? Share your true, raw breaking point in the comments. Today, we consider the death of a child to be a rare and utterly unexpected tragedy, an anomaly that shocks us to our core. But if you were born in the Middle Ages, you would be incredibly lucky to even make it past your 5th birthday. This is because the child mortality rate was astronomically high, a devastating reality for every family. In medieval England, a staggering 1/3 of all children died before reaching that tender age. The dangers would begin even whilst you were still in the womb. Unaware of the profound risks of alcohol fetal syndrome, medieval women would have been blissfully knocking back huge quantities of ale or wine, or both, throughout their entire pregnancies, believing it to be a healthy beverage, further compromising the unborn child's development. And don't even get started on their typically poor nutrition, which further compromise both mother and child, leading to weakened immune systems and susceptibility to disease. The death of a child is one of the most awful tragedies anyone can imagine, and in medieval Europe, the overall child mortality rate was thought to lie somewhere between a grim 20 to 30% for children dying under the age of 7, depending on the specific year and region. This meant children dying from incidents during birth, from tragic accidents in and around the home, or most commonly, from the ravages of war, famine, and rampant disease. Deadly illnesses that can easily be treated today with a simple vaccine or antibiotics, like whooping cough, measles, influenza, and various stomach infections, were uncurable killers, sweeping through communities with devastating efficiency, and the profound, soul-crushing grief for parents was just the same, just as agonizing, whether they lived in medieval Europe or thousands of miles away in medieval Japan, where a horrifying 48% of the population died as children. That's practically 1 in every 2 children perishing before reaching adulthood, leaving behind a trail of unimaginable sorrow. The justice system of the Middle Ages, and its associated crimes and punishments, were dramatically different from anything we know today, often brutal, arbitrary, and swift, because the church controlled just about every aspect of life, from what you wore to what you could eat and when you could eat it. Breaking societal norms often meant breaking religious law, which carried severe consequences. There were no police forces as we understand them, no organized patrols or investigative units. If you were the victim of a crime, your only recourse was to scream loudly, to raise a hue and cry, and desperately hope for the best, relying solely on your neighbor's willingness to intervene and assist. Often, no one would. For serious crimes, death was the common punishment, and these didn't just include murder or treason against the king. Forgery, arson, receiving stolen goods, robbery, and burglary were all capital offenses, punishable by hanging, sometimes publicly, to serve as a gruesome deterrent. In fact, stealing anything worth over 12 pence, the equivalent of about 3 weeks' wages for a common laborer, meant an automatic trip to the gallows, a chilling reflection of the value placed on property over human life. Early in the period, the terrifying concept of trial by ordeal was a stark reality, rooted in a belief that God would intervene to reveal the truth. Here, the guilt or innocence of the accused was determined by subjecting the suspect to a painful and often deadly experience, such as walking barefoot over red-hot coals or plunging your bare hand into boiling water or oil. The belief was that if you were truly innocent, God would perform a miracle and save you from injury, or ensure that your wounds healed perfectly without infection. If you suffered, if the burns festered, it was divine proof of your guilt, sealing your fate. Petty crimes, like being in debt, gambling, playing football on a holy day, or using abusive language in the street, were also dealt with quite harshly. Punishments ranged from public humiliation and agony in the stocks or pillory, where you would be exposed to the elements and the scorn of the community, to branding with hot irons, or even imprisonment in dark, damp, filthy dungeons. Many people, once imprisoned, died in prison itself because of the horrific, unsanitary conditions, the rampant disease, and the utter lack of decent food and water, turning a sentence of incarceration into a death sentence. Most crime, it must be noted, was intrinsically linked to the rampant poverty that plagued the lower classes, so theft was incredibly prevalent, a desperate act born of survival. And finally, war, what it isn't good for, then or now. The list of wars that ravaged the world during the 1,000-year period of the Middle Ages is simply insane, a testament to constant conflict. In total, there were over 370 documented wars across many empires, with the last major one, the Italian War, only finishing in 1504, bringing an end to the period. Many were fought simply to determine which incompetent noble was going to sit on the throne next as king or queen, or to settle petty territorial disputes, while others were contested for what were thought to be noble reasons, such as the religious crusades to reclaim the Holy Land, or feudal wars between lords. But then, as it tragically often is today, it was always the common people who were left to pay the ultimate brutal price, whether through conscription, taxation, or outright slaughter. As a serf, living under the pervasive European feudal system, if you found yourself living in the kingdom of one of 2 rich, powerful individuals who decided to wage war against each other, then you would be automatically obligated to fight. Peasants had to supply military service to their liege lord on a regular basis, forced to abandon their fields and families to march into battle. Men were often only sent away for short periods of time, typically around 40 days, because if everyone went off to war at the same time, there would be no one left to take care of the nobles' lands, no labor to grow crops, and thus no money or sustenance for all the wealthy people to spend on silly wars. The result was a medieval military that was, for the most part, disorganized, poorly equipped with little more than a spear or a pitchfork, and largely untrained, leading to a catastrophic number of dead people. Battlefields were chaotic, gruesome affairs, often ending in massacres. Even the nobility didn't entirely evade death, though their lives were significantly more comfortable. Around 30% of them died in one skirmish or another, a notable risk for their class. As for the commoners, the peasant soldiers and the innocent bystanders caught up in the conflict, no one really knows the true victim numbers. They were thought to be so insignificant that nobody ever kept a tally. Their deaths mere footnotes in the chronicles of their lords. We can only estimate the casualties from medieval wars, and the numbers are truly horrifying. During the First Crusade at the Siege of Jerusalem, a horrifying 90,000 people died in one brutal event. In all during the Crusade years, from 1095 until the end of the 13th century, there were between 1 to 3 million deaths across Europe and the Middle East, a staggering toll for religious fervor. The Hundred Years' War, fought between England and France from 1337 and 1453, produced between 2 and 3.5 million fatalities, devastating entire regions. And in Asia, the vast Mongol invasions and conquests that took place during the 13th and 14th centuries ended with the unimaginable loss of between 30 and 40 million lives, reshaping entire continents. It really truly wasn't a good time to be a soldier or a peasant, as the threat of violent death was a constant looming shadow. What specific part of Dark Ages daily life do you think you'd find surprisingly tolerable, despite all the immense, crushing hardship, if any part at all? Be brutally honest with yourself, and share your deepest, darkest, most absurd thoughts in the comments below. So as you sip your clean, filtered water, scroll effortlessly on your glowing smartphone screen, and finally rest in your perfectly temperature-controlled home, take a profound moment to truly appreciate the sheer, unprecedented luxury of your existence. Our ancestors, whether in ancient Egypt or the Dark Ages, endured unimaginable hardships, facing relentless, life-threatening challenges on a daily basis that would unequivocally break most of us within mere hours. Their resilience, their sheer will to survive and persevere against such overwhelming odds, is truly astonishing. If this immersive journey into the brutal realities of the Dark Ages made you appreciate your toilet, your clean water, or your freedom just a little bit more, then hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten histories and untold realities, and please share this video with someone who perhaps thinks they're tough and could handle a day in the past. Your engagement truly helps us keep unearthing these often uncomfortable truths, allowing us to learn from the past and appreciate the present. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next forgotten story.